37 is a matter of postponed business on third reading. The clerk will read the resolution.
SJR 37 by Birdwell, proposing a constitutional amendment clarifying that a voter must be a United States citizen.
Ms. Noble.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SJR 37 gives the citizens of Texas the decision in November if we should add citizenship to our constitutionally important criteria
Mr. Romero,
for
for
those
what
who may
purpose?
vote.
The gentleman, will the gentlelady yield when she's done with her layout?
Yield.
I just want to add that the Senate passed this on a bipartisan basis, 28-3, and I would like for us to join them in sending this to the voters in November.
Mr. Romero,
I will
for what
yield.
purpose?
Okay, thank you, Representative Noble. So federal law currently already prohibits non-citizen voting in federal elections, correct?
That is true. But it does leave it up to the state whether or not you let non-citizens vote in local elections.
So
And
the
so
nas-
that's what we're nailing down here.
So the National Voter Registration Act and the Help America Vote Act require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. Non-citizens are not eligible to vote in U.S. law, so you're correct.
Yes.
So does the Texas Constitution already limit voting to U.S. citizens?
Well, the part of the Constitution we're talking about today is where it prohibits. So thank you for that question, because right now our Texas Constitution only lists 3 reasons that make a person ineligible to vote, and that is if you're too young, being determined by a court to be mentally incompetent, or convicted of certain felonies. So we're just going to add this one to the list of
Currently-
things that make you ineligible to vote.
Were you aware that currently in the Texas Constitution it clearly states every person subject to none of the disqualifications prescribed in Section 1 of this article, who is a citizen of the United States shall be deemed a qualified voter? Right? So it's in the Texas Constitution currently.
But it's not in the disqualified part, and that is where we need to add it. But thank you for pointing that out.
Do you believe that this type of legislation would mislead voters to thinking that non-citizenship voting is actually occurring in Texas?
I do not believe that to be true, but I think that we need to let the citizens of Texas decide whether they think that non-citizen voting is a disqualifying measure.
Do you believe, because of that statement, that there's evidence of widespread non-citizen voting in Texas?
As we spoke about when I laid this bill out originally, I was actually an election judge for 20 years in Collin County, and I had no evidence of that in my polling place at all.
So do you believe that this is a proper use of taxpayer dollars to add a measure that restates what the U.S. Constitution already guarantees?
I believe it is a really good use to state what Texas wants to consider important when the federal statute leaves it open to us to do so, and that's what we are doing.
And again, just as my last question, are you not concerned with future elections and campaign consultants misleading voters to making them believe that this is how they stop non-citizens from voting?
I hope that that is not used in that way, but as we know that political consultants have told a lot of interesting things about a lot of us in this room, and I would hope that they would keep this to what it is, which is just making sure that Texans, it's very clear what the criteria is for those that may not vote.
Well, I appreciate, but just to be clear again, this is not about your belief of non-citizens actually voting. Your point for this bill in spending almost $200,000 of taxpayer dollars is for the purpose of just matching the Texas state constitution with the U.S. Constitution?
No, I never said that, because the
adding
U.S.
the disqualification?
Yes, adding a disqualification I think is important.
Despite the fact that it's already in the U.S. Constitution?
In the U.S. Direction that we were given, the states can decide about local elections, and this makes it very clear in local elections that we will not have non-citizen voters.
Are you familiar with the organization Only Citizens Vote Coalition?
I am not.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Move passage.
Mr. Wu in opposition.
Members, as someone said before, this is unnecessary virtual signaling on a problem that doesn't exist. I urge all to vote no or vote PNV. Let's not continue the charade anymore. Let's not continue the lies that Donald Trump has spewed about our democracy and about our election process.
Ms. Gomez in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, with all due respect, I rise in opposition to today's motion to what I believe is an absolute redundancy. And let me be very clear, no matter what anyone votes here today, whether it's yes or no or white light, no matter what anyone does here today, no one is attempting to make it possible for an undocumented person to vote in this state. However, I do want to read from an excerpt of a letter from our Attorney General dated October 7th, 2024, a letter that Attorney General Paxton wrote to our Secretary of State, wherein he states on exactly this issue, whether or not there is some lack of clarity as to whether or not the state of Texas allows undocumented immigrants to vote. Our Attorney General states, and I quote, "Together, federal and Texas state law prohibit non-U.S. citizens from registering to vote in any election in Texas, whether that be local, county, or state." Furthermore, he states, Texas law likewise provides that, quote unquote, to be eligible to vote in an election in this state, a person must unequivocally be a United States citizen. And the Attorney General cites Article 6, Section 2 of our Texas Constitution. He states, as a matter of fact, in Texas, it is a state jail felony to lie about your citizenship status when registering to vote. And it is a second-degree felony for a non-U.S. citizen to cast a vote. Nothing that we do here today is going to change that fact. However, again, I do believe it is unequivocally clear that you must be a United States citizen to vote in the state of Texas, and I cannot support the endless redundancy and waste of taxpayer dollars to further a narrative that might otherwise be used to threaten or create fear in our communities when none exists. And with that, I close.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Gonzalez, for what purpose?
does the gentlelady yield?
The gentlelady yield for questions.
I do.
She yields for questions.
Representative Gomez, when this bill first came up, RHR first came up, you did a wonderful job of explaining through questions that we do not need this piece of legislation. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
And not only did you do that in questioning, now you have read to the entire body from the OAG why we do not need this piece of legislation.
There appears in writing to be no question in the Attorney General's mind as to, that is our lead chief prosecutor in the state of Texas, as to whether or not you need to be a U.S. citizen to vote in this state. He is absolutely clear in interpreting, again, Article 6, Section 2 of our Texas Constitution. He identifies, in order to be a qualified voter in this state, every person subject to none of the disqualifications or any of the laws enacted under that section who is a citizen of the United States. The Attorney General understands that Section 2 is the base logic and reasoning, i.e. you must be a citizen. Section 1 just refers to a disqualifying factor, but you do not get to the disqualifying factors without meeting the first threshold requirement of the Texas Constitution, that is Section 2, which states you must be a U.S. citizen to vote. And I'm not trying to change that here today.
I really appreciate you. Earlier today, there was an amendment about the Women's Bill of Rights, and we said, let's codify that, and people voted against that. So now you're just asking for the people who voted against that to have the same level of consistency. Is that accurate?
That's correct. If we do not need redundancies in one area of the law, we certainly don't need to waste taxpayer dollars on what is absolutely clear in the Texas Constitution.
I really appreciate the information you're providing to the body so we don't waste taxpayer dollars, so we don't target immigrant communities, so we don't have redundancies, so we don't create misinformation about the security of our elections. Thank you for all your transparency and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez. And again, members, no one here is trying to pass or make it so that an undocumented person can register to vote in the state of Texas, and our Texas Constitution prohibits that already. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ms. Noble to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let's join the Senate in a bipartisan way of letting our voters speak on this in November. Move passage.
Members, strict enforcement has been requested, so you need to vote from your desk. This is a record vote on SJR 37. Clerk, ring the bell. Have all members voted? 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 Mr. Cook, you can vote from your desk. There being 102 ayes and 14 nays, SJR 37 is passed. Chair lays out on second reading House Bill 3142. Clerk, read the bill.
HB 3142 by Isaac, relating